Support for today's episode comes from Amazon, sharing stories and initiatives focused on protecting water resources and strengthening water resilience in communities around the world. PFAS reporting deadlines are creating new inspection triggers. PFAS compliance deadlines are triggering inspection attention that most facilities have not mapped. Most facilities tracking the per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, compliance calendar are focused on the major federal reporting deadlines now stacking up across TSCA, TRI, stormwater permitting, and corrective action oversight. The Toxic Substances Control Act, TSCA, Section 8.7 reporting requirement covers PFAS manufacturing and import activity going back to 2011. The scope that catches facilities off guard is the article level requirement. This applies to finished products containing PFAS, not just raw chemical manufacturing. A company that imports PFAS-containing components or assembles products that include PFAS materials is in scope even if it has never thought of itself as a PFAS manufacturer. The 15-year look-back period, applied at that level of scope, is a significant data collection exercise for any multi-site operation drawing on legacy records across business units. EPA's revised timeline replaces the original October 2026 reporting schedule, shifting the opening of the data submission window to 60 days following the effective date of the upcoming substantive revisions, or a hard regulatory backstop of January 31, 2027, whichever arrives first. Once this window officially opens, most facilities will have a standard 6-month period to complete their filings, while small manufacturers reporting exclusively as article importers will be granted an additional 6 months. This strategic delay gives the EPA time to review thousands of public comments and finalize critical proposed updates, which may introduce much-needed relief like de minimis concentration thresholds and article exemptions. TRI reporting for 205 PFAS compounds is due July 1st, and the exemption rules changed. Separate from TSCA, Toxics Release Inventory, reporting for PFAS compounds carries a July 1st, 2026 deadline for 2025 reporting year data. 9 additional PFAS were added to the TRI reportable list in January 2025, bringing the total to 205 compounds. EPA eliminated the PFAS de minimis exemption through a 2023 rule effective for the 2024 reporting year, with first affected reports due July 1, 2025. That exemption change is the piece many facilities have missed. A facility that filed correctly under prior rules and has not revisited its PFAS inventory since EPA eliminated the PFAS de minimis exemption may be filing an incomplete return for 2025. TRI data feeds directly into EPA's Enforcement and Compliance History Online (CO) database, which logged more than 1.5 million user sessions in fiscal year 2025. That database is not just an agency tool. Lenders, insurers, permit reviewers, community groups, and state regulators are in it regularly, comparing facility records against each other and against other filed data. An incomplete TRI filing does not stay between the facility and EPA. EPA withdraws proposed RCRA PFAS hazardous constituent rule, but cleanup exposure remains. On May 8, 2026, the EPA withdrew its proposed rule to designate 9 PFAS compounds as RCRA hazardous constituents. The agency determined that existing Resource Conservation and Recovery Act RCRA hazardous constituents regulations already grant sufficient authority to require site cleanups without modifying the definition of hazardous waste. The withdrawal does not eliminate potential liability or cleanup exposure for facilities managing PFAS-containing waste streams. Instead, it signals that EPA may continue pursuing PFAS remediation through existing corrective action authorities rather than through a new hazardous constituent designation process. For facilities with active or legacy RCRA corrective action obligations, PFAS contamination could still become part of ongoing site investigations, remediation discussions, or permit reviews. Environmental and legal teams should evaluate whether historical waste management practices, disposal areas, or industrial processes could draw additional regulatory scrutiny under EPA's current interpretation of its authority. The shift also reinforces a broader compliance reality. Even where formal PFAS rulemakings are delayed, revised, or withdrawn, Federal and state regulators continue expanding oversight through existing statutory frameworks. Industrial stormwater permits and PFAS monitoring are closer than most facilities realize. The EPA's proposed draft 2026 Multi-Sector General Permit (MSGP) introduces quarterly, report-only PFAS monitoring for 40 compounds across 23 industrial sectors, and the 2021 MSGP remains under administrative continuance. Even before finalization, draft permit frameworks often shape inspection conversations, information requests, and regulator expectations in EPA-administered jurisdictions. A facility in one of those jurisdictions that has not assessed its PFAS stormwater exposure is in a demonstrably weaker position during an NPDES inspection than one that has. Draft permit conditions carry practical weight before finalization in EPA-permitted jurisdictions. Waiting for the final rule to begin the assessment is going to put a lot of facilities behind the curve when the clock starts. The bottom line: moving from awareness to audit. The window for passive regulatory tracking is officially closed. Federal agencies are actively transitioning from setting rules to enforcing them, using multi-layered reporting requirements to build a clear map of industrial PFAS use. Facilities that rely on standard, outdated compliance routines will likely miss latent vulnerabilities in their legacy data and current supply chains. Next steps for facility operations. To protect your facility from unexpected inspection exposure, leadership should immediately initiate 3 concrete steps. Audit the gaps. Compare your current compliance calendar against the 4 areas detailed above. Identify which of the 3 missing assessments require immediate resource allocation. Engage legal counsel. Structure all initial historical data discovery and legacy RCRA footprint evaluations under attorney-client privilege to safely manage risk discovery. Coordinate supply chains. Issue formal data requests to upstream chemical and component suppliers to ensure compliance with the zero-threshold TRI rules before next year's filing deadline. Ignoring gaps across these 4 areas increases the likelihood of compliance exposure, incomplete disclosures, and regulatory scrutiny. By proactively executing these assessments today, you can successfully turn a major regulatory liability into a manageable, structured operational process. Sustainability Soundbites water coverage is sponsored by Amazon. Visit the link in our show notes to learn more about Amazon's Spotlight on Water. For sponsorship opportunities with Environment and Energy Leader, please reach out to a member of our team.